Hey gang, hello, hello. Here is your Monday question. Here is your Monday poll question at Smerconish.com. To facilitate a ceasefire, is the exchange of 48 Israeli hostages, 20 presumed alive, for 250 Palestinians serving life sentences justified? Circle back to that in just a moment. Another unbelievable weekend of football, both at the collegiate and pro level. Takeaways that stand out to me: they're unhappy in Happy Valley, and a coaching change is in process. Kansas City bested Detroit. Don't know if you stayed up to watch that one. Things got ugly at the end of that game. Aaron Rodgers, I have to say, I got sucked in and watched some of the Pittsburgh football yesterday, having a resurgence in Steel Town. Meanwhile, New York Green, if you know who I'm talking about, still winless. And Philadelphia, a pretty miserable team and town for a team that is nevertheless 4-2. However your team might have fared this weekend, there's always another way for you to win on the Play Gun Lake app and the BetParx online casino app, the only that I ever use and recommend in the states of Pennsylvania and Michigan. You get all the action, plus BetParx and Play Gun Lake have your favorite casino games right on your phone. Make your downtime fun time. Play blackjack, craps, roulette, hundreds of online slots. Join me on the BetParx and the Play Gun Lake apps right now. New users get a $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. That's a great deal. BetParx.com, PlayGunLake.com for all the details. You got to be 21, and in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Michigan, gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Before I get to the Monday poll question, some interesting results over the weekend. First, when we were last together on radio, Friday, if peace holds in the Middle East, should President Trump receive a Nobel Prize next year? 36,116 voted. The no votes were 74.14. That's what gave rise to the Sunday poll question. But let me stop along the way and tell you about Saturday. Saturday, 51,000, nice number, 309 votes cast. Will the Gaza deal lead to peace between Palestinians and Israelis? 86.18% said no. We hope you're wrong. We all hope you're wrong, right? We hope that the majority were wrong, not that they're fingers crossed and wishing for it, but they're probably just pessimistic given how many false starts there have been in the past. But let me go to that Friday poll question, because when I looked at that result, I thought to myself, come on, if peace comes to the Middle East, if 86% of the 51,000 who voted Saturday are wrong, doesn't that number itself show you how huge it would be if peace holds in the Middle East because of Trump? So that caused me on Sunday to just say, okay, reveal yourselves. How many of you are reflexively anti-Trump? And you know what? I appreciate the honesty, because 72.82% said that they were. And I think that explains that Friday result, because of course, if the peace holds, he's deserving. Okay, the Monday poll question, today's poll question: to facilitate a ceasefire, is the exchange of 48 Israeli hostages, 20 presumed alive, for 250 Palestinians serving life sentences justified? And the whole presumed alive, I need to note, this was posted before the events actually began. And the events actually began at 8 a.m. local time, 1 a.m. Eastern time, when the first group of 7 hostages were transferred by Hamas to the Red Cross, which then delivered them to Israeli forces inside Gaza. And then the other 13 hostages were released 2 hours later. Before that second group was released, Hamas facilitated video calls between the families and the now seemingly former hostages. So great news. Great news. 20 live hostages. It's happened. They were released. What a wonderful day it is for Israel, for the globe, for the 20 hostages, and for all of their families. From the Associated Press, it was a day of joy and tears across Israel. Loved ones and friends watched as Hamas released the last living hostages held captive for over 2 years in Gaza City. People in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square sobbed as photos of the hostages reuniting with their families flashed on the large screens. The names and the faces of the hostages and the families have become household names across Israel for the past 2 years. And as this has been transpiring, President Trump in Israel, as a matter of fact, as I deliver this live, he is still speaking at the Knesset. And it's been very interesting to monitor his remarks. Prime Minister Netanyahu was glowing in his praise of Trump as he introduced him. He said that words to the effect of, he's not yet gotten that other prize, although he will, said Netanyahu, but he'll be the first Jew recognized with the Israel Prize, and everybody applauded as a result. Netanyahu then introduced Trump. Trump stood and said the hostages are back. He said that he has now resolved 8 wars in 8 months. Quote, my personality is all about stopping wars. So meanwhile, as this was taking place, as the Israeli hostages were being released, now comes the flip side of this coin, which relates to today's poll question. By the way, I'm not looking to be a Debbie Downer. I'm thrilled that this transpired. I find it interesting that this whole transaction and the deals that have been reached for other hostages before the final 20 has been without any real conversation about the fact that they've been brought about through negotiating with terrorists. And we're fond of saying, and the Israelis have been fond of saying, that they never negotiate with terrorists. I just want a little recognition here that it's happening and probably on balance is worth it, although you're going to tell me in your answer to the poll question, but that's the way that it came to pass. Again, from the Associated Press, a different story. Under a ceasefire deal, many hope will finally turn the page on a 2-year war. Israel has been preparing to exchange nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners for the 48 hostages, some alive, still dead, still held on the Gaza Strip. In previous exchanges, both sides have sought to tightly manage the releases, including the images, the clothing, the ceremonies, because of the political sensitivity. The 2,000 include 1,700 of the several thousand Palestinians that Israeli troops seized from Gaza during their 2-year war and have held without charge. Those slated for release, and I'll tell you more about them in just a moment. They also include 250 Palestinians sentenced to prison terms, most of them convicted of murder and terrorism in deadly attacks on Israelis dating back decades, as well as others convicted of lesser charges, according to Israel's Justice Ministry. The longest serving among them has been imprisoned for 40 years. Some of the 250 convicted Palestinians will return home to East Jerusalem or to the West Bank or Gaza. A majority will be sent to Gaza or into exile abroad. And then this story paints the picture of how they were released and the fact that there were flyers, there were drones monitoring the release, and leafleting took place by the Israelis saying, you have been warned, don't celebrate. Some celebrations nonetheless took place. And as of the moment that I'm speaking, thank God, everything has happened without incident. Early on Monday, Hamas published the names of just over 1,900 prisoners and detainees who it said were slated for release. Israel did not confirm the release. And then there's additional information about who exactly they are. So the only complaint that I've heard about this came from one Republican congressman, Wisconsin Representative Derek Van Orden, who said, make no mistake, we're negotiating with terrorists. And by the way, just in terms of how personal, the negotiations with terrorists became, Axios this morning has this tidbit: an unusual and dramatic meeting last Wednesday between President Trump's envoys and Hamas leaders helped get the Gaza peace deal across the line, says reporter Barak Ravid. One barrier to a deal was that Hamas leaders feared that Israel would resume the war once the hostages were released. In order to seal the deal, One of the sources contended Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, had to meet with Hamas leaders in person and directly to assure them that Trump wouldn't let that happen. So the ageless argument, as I say, holds, that we're rewarding terrorists when we negotiate with them, and it'll only ensure that there is more terrorism. Also, that kidnappers are not reliable negotiating partners, although this seems to have, fingers crossed, and thank God, this seems to have worked out well. I don't know if you know the origin on the U.S. side of we don't negotiate with terrorists. The Europeans have been all along, but it actually goes back to 1973 when members of the Palestinian militant organization took a group of hostages in the Saudi embassy in Khartoum, among them 3 Westerners, and at a press conference as to how our government would respond, President Nixon replied, seemingly off the cuff, that there could be no negotiation with terrorists. And the following day, the Western hostages were killed. So one other interesting thoughts that I wanted to share with you, just as I was reading in and, trying to think about what's the proper response. I remember in practicing law, if there were a settlement by a judge or an arbiter in a case in which I was involved, they inevitably would say, well, neither side is happy. That must mean that it was a successful result. So there's a professor at Harvard. His name is Robert Mnookin. He's the director of the Harvard Negotiation Project and wrote a book called, seems very apropos, Bargaining with the Devil: When to Negotiate, When to Fight. And he also, by the way, not only is a professor and not only does he author books, but he's someone who advises governments and corporations on negotiation strategy and conflict resolution. And he's also written about Israel's hostage swaps with Hamas. So he was asked in an interview that I read that was published in the Jerusalem Post, do you accept the idea that a successful negotiation is one in which both sides are disappointed? Okay? Hearkening right back to the judges and the arbiters who used to tell me, well, no side is happy. I guess we did a good job. Professor Mnookin says, no, he doesn't accept the idea that a successful negotiation is one in which both sides are disappointed. What does he say? If the people are rational actors, it should create an outcome that each side views as superior to what their best alternative would otherwise be. Now, it is often the case that the negotiated deal is disappointing in comparison with the perfect world, but on the other hand, almost by definition, if you and I settle a terrible dispute, we wouldn't have made a deal if we didn't think it was superior to our expected alternative. And what's often true is sometimes you and I could settle a conflict with an arrangement that makes us feel positive about doing business together in the future. And I think that's really a wise way of looking at this. What's the alternative? So if you're Israel and you're negotiating with terrorists, let's just be clear, that's what we're doing to get back the 20 live hostages, even at the expense of handing over 250 life. And these are, as President Trump would say, some bad hombres. In the newsletter today, I have an American Jewish Committee, AJC, list, the most complete list that I've seen of who are these people. Prisoners slated for release. Ayad Abu al-Rob, commander of Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Jenin, responsible for multiple suicide bombings between 2003 and 2005. Mohammed Zakarna, Fatah operative involved in the 2009 taxi driver murder of Grigory Rajinovich. Muhammad Abu Aroub carried out a stabbing attack in 2017 that killed Reuven Schmerling. Mohammed Kwasmach. I could go on and on and on. But every one of these are like really bad people. But to the point of the professor, you've got to evaluate this in terms of, well, what was the alternative? If the people are rational actors, it should create an outcome that each side views as superior to what their best alternative would otherwise be. Israel's best alternative would be what? To continue destroying whatever is left of Gaza? and to further risk the killing of the 20 live hostages, and with what end game? The end game here, brought together by President Trump and his team, and I think that needs to be said, is superior to not doing the deal. So, to facilitate a ceasefire, the question today, to facilitate a ceasefire is the exchange of 48 Israeli hostages, 20 presumed alive, for 250 Palestinians serving life sentences, and I could have said another 1,700 who are being released. But the 1,700, many of them were being held without charges and were not to be believed to be involved in the events of 10/7. Is it justified? Sadly, I think that it is. So I'm a yes vote today. I am a yes vote today, despite long believing we can't negotiate with terrorists. Go vote. It's a happy day. It's a joyous day for Israel, and my fingers are crossed that the peace holds. And by the way, I can tell you one other thing. Unless it's a busy news day, who knows what's to come. But my plan for tomorrow is to have some kind of poll question on Tuesday, which is to say, if President Trump could apply his deal-making skills at home, the way he's doing around the globe, would he be successful? Because one of the takeaways from all of this, in my view, and it's not unique to me, I had this conversation with Tom Friedman on Saturday. It's like he's spending all this time, and it matters so much to him to be perceived as a peacemaker overseas and around the globe. What about here at home? The government is still shut down. It's day 12 of the shutdown. And the president, great, wheeling and dealing around the planet. And yet he won't put people in a room like he's doing Israel and Hamas. I don't get it. I don't get it. But it's a happy day, and I'm not here to detract from it. Okay. Go vote at Smerconish.com on the Monday poll question. See you on radio. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you.